Hello and welcome to the show. This episode, episode 8 with Todd Rosenlieb, has some significant audio issues. If you give it about 5 to 10 minutes, you'll get used to it. Todd was a great guest, so apologies to him. Thanks for listening. This is Andrew Paul Cronin, and you're listening to the Q&A with A.P.C, the show that features conversations with artists, cultural figures, policymakers, performers, and other innovators living in Virginia. Episode 8, Todd Rosenlieb. Todd Rosenlieb is a professional dancer, choreographer, and director of the TRDance Center in Norfolk, Virginia. Todd has been a professional dancer since 1992. In those 23 years, he has been company director of the Eric Hawkins Dance Company in New York City, created original choreography and performed across the country, worked with the likes of Mikhail Baryshnikov, Annie Lennox, and others. He holds a master's degree from New York University's Tisch School for the Arts, is currently the chair of the dance department for the Governor's School for the Arts, and is director of the TRDance Center, which recently celebrated its 10th anniversary. Thanks to Sheena and Nancy at the TRDance Center for their help in setting up the interview. For more information about Todd and his dance company, visit trdance.org. That's trdance.org. This episode of the Q&A with A.P.C. was recorded at the TRDance Center during business hours in Norfolk, Virginia. Have you seen the Sia video with Shia LaBeouf? They're in a cage.
Oh yeah.
You seen that?
With the little girl from Dance
Yes.
Moms? Yeah.
Yes. Is that very abstract? You know, like how does that compare to something that was around like 50 years ago?
I think that the video is very modern dance with an edge of what they call contemporary style to it. I think it's also artsy. I don't know how appropriate that costume was
For her?
12-year-old girl. But
Yeah.
I could see why the choreographer, I mean, if she was in a movie about Armageddon and that was the world left after and she was in that, it would be fine. You know what I mean? Like, I thought it was a good video. I think that kid's great. She needs to get away from those dance people.
What do you mean?
Dance Moms. She's one of the kids from the TV
So I'm not
show
familiar
Dance.
with that.
Oh, it's this horrible woman who runs this competition dance school, and she's literally like this good. And she's mean, and the mothers get in fights, and they're all competitive about their kids getting solos, and it's ridiculous. It's a world I can't live in or near.
Do you know what channel it's on?
CW maybe?
Yeah.
How's it working now for you?
Kind of shitty. And I don't quite know the reason why that is. We'll just go ahead and get started, and I'll just mess with it as we go along. Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Were you born in Pennsylvania?
I was born in upstate New York, but grew up in Pennsylvania from the age of 5.
Okay. You have 2 brothers?
I do. 2 older brothers, 7 years older and 3 years older. A dentist and an energy mogul.
One of the bad energy moguls?
No, a wonderful energy mogul.
Okay. Are there such things?
Yeah, basically what he does is designs packages for parts of the country whose population has grown and they need more energy. So
Okay.
he tries to find healthy, stable, environmentally friendly packages that he can sell to the...
Oh, so like he really is like one of the good ones.
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe like an ExxonMobil kind of
No.
energy kind of thing.
No.
You said in an interview once that your dad was the kind of guy who would work 12-hour days and made sure that he was home to eat dinner with the family.
Oh, absolutely.
What did he do, and like what was your relationship with him like?
My dad was a rocket scientist. He was a mechanical engineer who worked through contracts through GE and for NASA during the space program in the 60s. And he, first of all, he couldn't talk about Apollo 13 for 50 years, and now he has Alzheimer's and he can't remember. That was really frustrating.
Sure.
But my relationship with my father, I always say I've never known a nicer man. He lives here in assisted living and lived with me for a year and a half. He's the kindest, most generous. I hope I can be half of the man that he is.
Did he have any stories about like space exploration or like the mysteries of the unknown in terms of like
It wasn't
classified information?
No, it wasn't so much about those things because they would work on the navigation device. So they would work on certain parts of the ship. And really, they weren't allowed to talk to anybody about it. Yes, we knew my dad worked for the top secret for the space program, but if my mother needed to talk to him, she had to call somebody who called my dad, who dad called her back on a secure line. Like it was that kind of thing.
Was he into the arts?
My dad definitely enjoyed music, dancing socially. He played some instruments, as he would say, poorly. But it was my mother who really loved the arts.
So I read, I saw this interview, that your mom, well, one of the things you were talking about in the interview was how your mom, you were cooking. It was a YouTube video through All Daily, where you cooked brie and artichoke dip, which both looked delicious, by the way.
Yeah.
But you were talking, as you were cooking, you were talking about how your mom was able to cook dishes that tasted like they had been taken all day to prepare, but were not.
She called them lickety-split.
Lickety-split.
Yeah, those were the recipes she labeled as lickety-split.
But she also was interested in entertaining. Were there dinner parties that...
Were there dinner parties? There was never a time that you pulled up in front of my house that someone wasn't there visiting.
Mom's friends, dad's friends?
Everybody's friends. It could have been anyone. Our house was like, the front door should have been a revolving door.
And this was in Pennsylvania?
Yeah. And it was, one of those neighborhoods, we call them the development there. I guess the subdivision is what they call them in Virginia.
Yeah.
And it was on the way to and from everywhere, the grocery store, the mall, and so people just stopped by incessantly. And that was the way the house was. Anyone who was there or stopped by, you were come right in. Most people didn't even knock.
Yeah. Did she work, or was she staying home?
She was a stay-at-home mom until I was in 8th grade, and then she went back to work. And it was part-time. She never returned to her teaching career after the children, but she worked part-time and loved it. And I sort of loved it too, because I got to be home alone, which my brothers never did.
And was she artistic?
Oh yeah, she played 5 instruments and sang. She was incredibly funny and a wonderful writer. She never was the one on stage in a play, although there were talent shows and those kinds of things that she was involved in. And I'm sure some elementary school plays along the way, but that, at that time you either became a secretary or you became a school teacher or you got married.
She didn't play out professionally?
No, we do have several recordings of her, however, that they did do professionally when she was 16. They were quite amazing.
What were the 5 instruments?
No, this was her singing.
Oh, her singing.
Yeah, her singing voice.
Okay.
The one that I have a copy of is called The World is Waiting, and I used it in the piece I did about my dad and his Alzheimer's. And the piece was called All I Am Is Hers. And it was great because I used all male voices from the 30s and 40s, which was their childhood where they grew up together in a small town, and then their high school years. And then the last piece of music was my mother. And
their relationship was sort of, was it a model relationship?
Yeah, I mean, it was annoying. It was like a 50s TV show. Happy, in love, still held hands after 54 years.
Affectionate.
Snuggled on the couch and kissed each other every time they came in the door or were leaving. It was an amazingly loving place to grow up.
Seems kind of rare for, I guess, that time. I feel like now it's more okay for men to be more open with their emotions and their feelings and to be affectionate. They communicated with each other?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Completely. And they communicated with us and were incredibly affectionate toward us. My father was the first one to give you a hug and kiss you on the lips.
Wow.
That was just his, son. It was adorable.
You didn't actually start dancing until you were 20?
Yeah, I was in college. That's absolutely right.
But you sang in the choir?
Oh, yeah.
So did you guys grow up going to church, or was it sort of you sang at church?
Well, I sang in school choirs.
Okay.
And I was a young gymnast, and I was a very serious gymnast from about the age of 9 until 14 when I had Osgood-Schlatters disease, and my knees would just buckle, so you outgrow it.
I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, you grow too fast, and your knee joint gets a deposit on them, like I have a bump on my knee, and it hurts, one, but really they're just not stable. And my 2 greatest events were vault and Florex, so it's hard to tumble when your knees don't work.
Right.
But yeah, like I used to work out with the Villanova gymnastic team when I was 12 on the weekends.
You were an elite gymnast.
I was at the time, yes.
Yeah.
And at that age, you're just getting the upper body strength to really progress at the rings, at the parallel bars, at the pommel horse. So it was sort of depressing that I had to leave it behind after all that work trying to get to that place. after I got out of gymnastics because of my knees, I did a lot of musical theater, and I played the piano, sang in choirs. So all of the elements that go into dance, understanding music, being able to perform, having a physical prowess, they were all sort of in place. And the only thing I hadn't really done was take formal dance training.
Right.
Although I was always cast in every dance because I could fake it.
Right.
And I could do the round up, backhand, spring back, flip. And every musical has one of those, just for the record.
And stick the landing.
Stick
would be
it.
hard with the knee,
Yeah.
with the knee condition.
Yeah, but I had outgrown it by then, so.
Did you guys go to church growing up?
We did. My mother's family was from Beirut, Lebanon, and they left Beirut because the Catholics were being persecuted. So my mother pretty much made sure that we did everything her mother would have wanted us to do, which was every rite of passage from baptism, communion, confirmation.
Did you do confession?
No, because I would lie, and that's no good.
But there was a time where you had been in the room with the screen and all that. And,
Oh yes,
sure.
oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I figured if you feel like you don't want to tell the truth to the priest, that's probably not the place for you to go.
That's right. Yeah. No, I was raised Catholic also, and I did the whole thing, baptized. I was confirmed. Right. There was some confession, and I guess it was always. I always liked the music. My sister sings, and sort of the spectacle of it and the architecture of the building. But I guess for me, it was always presented as fact. And then once I turned, I guess about 13 or 14, and I found out that it was, not, or faith.
Yeah, faith is based on not facts.
and that sort of coincided with sort of some teen angst. So yeah, do you still go to church?
I do not. It was so funny because my mother said after we were all done all those things and she was getting older, she's like, I'm pretty sure God can hear me from here. So she definitely had a faith and a belief, but it was not necessarily. But although they gave money to the Catholic Church up until the day that she died. So.
Right.
It's interesting because they never forced religion on us, and we were required to go to church with them. But we were able to believe what we needed to believe, and I sort of always felt that your God is a Muslim, or your God is a Jewish person, or your God is a Catholic, or your God who goes to Church of Christ, which seems to be a very different God, obviously.
Yeah.
I thought they were all just one God. We just had different names for them.
Sure.
This was an entity that we believed in to have a better outlook on life and a better prospect for the future and keep us in. So it was really interesting how I had perceived it as a kid. Organized religion has never been my favorite thing.
Yeah.
It's just too much judgment. I don't understand how any single Christian who calls themselves a Christian could be against anybody else for their differences. That goes against Christianity.
Sure.
I mean, you just have to read the book.
Right. Well, and the book also contradicts itself.
100 times,
on everything. You did some musical theater. You did play the piano,
did,
some other
yes.
instruments as well.
Yes, lots.
Do you have a piano at home?
I do not. I left the piano at the family home when I went to college, and I played through college and also did competitive singing with classical repertoire, as well as musicals at the university. But after that I moved to New York, and you don't take a piano to New York. I did have a Casio keyboard for a while. That was exciting. But even that went away after a while.
And you went to Bucknell University,
yeah.
which is a private school in central
Absolutely.
Pennsylvania.
Yes.
You got a degree in English and economics. What was college like? What was college like for undergrad at Bucknell? Like, what kind of things?
Oh my gosh, first of all, it's the most beautiful campus, and the quality of the education is outrageous. I think the faculty to student ratio was like 1 to 3. Like literally there were so many faculty, and I couldn't wait to go to class. If you liked learning, I remember getting there and I was like, I'm the dumbest person here. I'm pretty sure of it. And then I realized as time went on I was not the dumbest person there. But I enjoyed it, and I was the kind of guy who never says no or ever puts down an opportunity. So I was the chair of the homecoming committee tailgate, and I was the president of the dance company, and I was on the student advisory board for the Weiss Performing Arts Center, and I was, I was a TA for the theater department, and those kinds of things.
Scholastically, how were you a disciplined student?
Oh yeah. When I cleaned up my parents' house and found my notebooks, oh my God, I was so organized. What happened to that brain?
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah.
I took pride in it. And I think that started early on, that there was a group of us in high school who were like, we never want anyone to say no to us because of our grades. And two, this can only benefit us, and we enjoyed the heck out of it. We took pride in having a vocabulary and loving to write and,
And then in college at Bucknell, you did a performance of Pirates of Penzance.
We did.
And I think that you tell the story.
All
People
right.
couldn't move well, so you went.
Well, here's what happened: is we did the Pirates of Penzance, and I had done probably by that time like 20 musicals in my lifetime. That doesn't even count the dramas. And I just loved it, and I could move to the music. And so the department asked me to choreograph it. And I was like, I'll do it, but you know, I'm going to just be doing what I know to do. And it turned out fantastic. I mean, how hard is it to do Keystone Cop movement and step, touch, wag your skirt? It was fabulous.
Right.
So at the end of the show, the theater department, some of the kids went to the dean and said, if we're going to do musicals, don't we need to have a dance department? I mean, it's a triple threat. We've only got 2 of the threats working for us. And by the end of that year, they had brought in Denise Jefferson from the Ailey School, and I was on the committee to hire the first professor for dance there too. So I said, since I opened my big mouth, I better go to class. So I didn't even register for the classes. I just went and took class. Yeah.
Do you still go back to Bucknell? Have you gone back to?
I was just there. I got the Bucknell Association for the Arts Achievement Award this year.
Congratulations!
Which was really nice, and my professors were there, and we had the best time. It was crazy. It was like being a kid again, just driving onto campus. I felt like I needed to drink a beer.
Ralph Lemon, African American choreographer,
amazing man.
Came around Bucknell at that time.
He was a guest artist at Bucknell and set a 13-minute duet in a weekend. Now, if you have any idea how much work it takes to learn 13 minutes of movement, just 2 people and a couple of chairs.
Did you know the name prior to him coming?
Yes. I mean, I was a dance magazine fan, and I read the Village Voice and all the reviews and all that stuff about dance, so I definitely did.
And what little I know about Ralph Lemon, at the beginning of his career, he sort of relied on props and costumes, and then transitioned more to kind of shed the props and costumes and more built from body movement to tell the narrative of the story.
And I was somewhere in the middle. But he didn't use props like, here's my hat. He would have a saddle on stage, or he would use something very provocative and interesting that you didn't think necessarily would go with this piece, and you could see how he wove the art together, the movement and the prop. Mm-hmm. So he was very wise. We had chairs. Ours was called folk dance, and it was this Indonesian gamelan music, and loud and abrasive.
Like the gold hats.
Well, no, we didn't wear that, but the music is that, and it's sort of loud and these strange, just
jingly jangly.
Yes, and atonal and all these things. And he said to this musical theater kid, I want your face to remain completely neutral throughout the whole dance. That was harder than learning 13 minutes of choreography, was to not make an expression during the whole dance. Especially when the movement could be angry, or you're dancing with a female and you know you need to connect and all those things. Nothing. And the funny part is when I relax my face, I look super mad. I never get to relax my face. And people see me driving, they're like, boy, I don't know who ticked you off the other day, but I saw you in the car. I'm like, that was just me. Look.
That was one of the questions I had written down, that you always seem so happy. But what gets you depressed?
Lack of interest in bettering yourself gets me depressed, and not myself, but seeing it in students. I think lack of respect in this building. You know, we celebrate diversity every day, and it doesn't matter whether anyone's alike or has the same goals, that we are all on a journey together, and you better show a lot of respect about that. That would get me depressed.
How does that manifest itself when you get angry or upset? Are you a yeller, or are you just...
well, in this building they call it Scary Todd, and it usually starts with me being quiet. That's when people are like, what is wrong with Todd? He has not said a word in an hour. But then when I can raise my voice, it's very rare. Very rare. It takes a lot, but that's when I mean it, and they know that.
One of the things that I think about in terms of dance, and I want your opinion on it, in terms of American culture and popularity, where would you say, in terms of ticket sales, box office receipts, things like that, where would you say that dance falls among the arts, being photography, painting, sculpture, live music, literature, poetry, dance? Where would you say
that lies?
Yeah.
So I would say that it depends. Like theater, because of Broadway and that kind of thing, really has a big ticket sale. There aren't as many dance companies as there are theater companies, and not as many dance companies as there are. And if there are, they're smaller, and we're unable to really, I can't really, don't have a count, and I don't know, but I would say that In America, dance has become more popular due to the commercialism of it at these days with Dancing with the Stars, and So You Think You Can Dance, and all of those kinds of things. So ticket sales go up, but I also always refer to it as the redheaded stepchild of the theater, or of the arts world, because people are worried they don't know what it means. Like in theater, you have words. In music, you have emotions and notes in the program about when it was written and why in a period of time.
Yes.
In dance, you get an inspiration as a choreographer. You have to find the music, you have to design the costumes, you have to design the lights, you have to cast the piece, and you're creating from a seed. And so I think that people worry about it. I always say that a dance, when I choreograph, it happens in two places. In my brain when I make it, and in your brain when you watch it. And in between is the interpretive web. And that interpretive web is shadowed by your background, your education, your experiences, your desires, where you live geographically, all of those things. So I always say you can't be wrong when you watch dance if you think it's about this, because for you, it was. And sometimes those are better than what I think the dance is about.
Absolutely, and that's certainly true in motion pictures and in movies and in film and things like that.
But you know, there are companies that, like Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, they're going to have a draw. They're there. Major companies like American Ballet Theater, New York City Ballet, the ones that you see on the cover of the New York Times. I just read an article about modern dance companies, what's the future of modern dance companies, and Paul Taylor, who's 80-something, very old, is sort of changing the model of his company. And of all of those companies, it was Martha Graham Dance Company, it was Eric Hawkins Dance Company, Merce Cunningham Dance Company, and the years of modern dance companies where you can just be dancing the works of one person are really over. I don't even want to see a whole night of Todd. You know what I mean? I want to have a rep company where we bring in young, creative, or experienced and legendary choreographers to set new works or old works, which is part of our mission here, is to keep the old works alive on the company, and that educates the audience as well. I love when they love my dances. I think that's great, and that's why I'm here. I want to have a voice to speak through my language, but there are more than one way to skin a cat, as it were, when it comes to creating a piece of art.
It seems, though, that dance, for whatever reason, is somewhat elusive in terms of people finding it. I picture people leaving certain modern dance performances and just saying, I didn't get it. Or I don't get it.
That's
and,
right.
and I feel like in movies, it's much more sort of spoon-fed to the audience. In
That's right.
literature, it's more spoon-fed to some extent. Art and sculpture is a little more elusive.
Right. Well, they require cognitive thinking. You have to make reference to something in your education, in your life, in your emotional spectrum that you recognize in that piece and make it your own. I think it's the great leveler, because you can't be wrong with dance. You've got your ideas and your feelings based on that work and the movement quality, and that's yours.
You can only be wrong if you say you don't get it, though.
That's right.
That's the only wrong
That's
answer.
right.
Is it different in other countries? Dance in terms of...
I think other countries have a more of appreciation for the arts overall than necessarily our country. Particularly in Virginia, I think we're at the bottom 3 per capita for arts money. West Virginia gives 5 times per capita to their population.
You wouldn't think that, would you? I wouldn't think that.
My parents grew up in West Virginia. No wonder they played 5 instruments and sang, and you know what I
Sure.
mean? That was a big influence.
Yeah.
And it's disappearing more and more. But other countries, certainly their national companies and those kinds of things are better taken care of. There's much more interest in funding them either through the government or through corporations and private donors than possibly the states.
You talked a little bit about Dancing with the Stars and how there is, I guess, some hope for dance in America based upon the commercialism and the glitz and the glam.
It has its pluses and minuses, though.
And it's a certain different style of dance.
Yeah.
I started watching Dancing with the Stars at the very beginning, the first few seasons, and I watched it for years, and it seemed it has completely turned into this very... It's not what it once was. It used to be this very like BBC-esque live orchestra, very sort of refined, and now it's just like fireworks and steam and all this more popular music, which is great.
Mirrors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess in a way that sheds light on dance, but it's not necessarily...
Right. Well, here's the thing, is that a dance is like a novel, is like a play. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has to develop. You have to recognize characters. You have to find yourself emotionally involved or attached to some part of it, whether it makes you angry or it makes you fall in love or it makes you sad. in a minute and 30 seconds, when you show all the tricks you can do on So You Think You Can Dance, I love that people enjoy that physical prowess and understand the athleticism to it, but it cuts out the cognitive thinking part, or the idea that a piece of art, a dance, is not a minute and a half or 2 minutes. A dance is 15 minutes and could be 4 sections, or a full-length ballet is 3 hours long.
Yes.
We did a piece of Eric Hawkins in this past concert, and it's 25 minutes long.
The New Moon?
Yeah, and it was just, for the dancers even, some of them had never danced a 25-minute dance, and that's, when I started dancing, that's what you got. You had a piece, an intermission, a piece, an intermission, and a piece, and that was an hour and 50 minutes.
To go back a little bit, in the late 80s, early 90s, you moved to New York City after Bucknell.
I did.
So what was that? Because, Bucknell is not New York City. So
No.
What were those early days in New York City like?
I moved there 5 days after graduating from Bucknell, and Bucknell's in a very small town called Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, that I think has 4 traffic lights. And the Amish live there, so you're often behind a horse and buggy. And really there was nothing to do but campus and a couple of restaurants in town and a bar or two, and that was all there was to do. My early days in New York were wonderful. Now, I grew up just outside of Philadelphia, so we were in the city all the time doing things. I was so excited to get somewhere where there was so much diversity, where the energy never stopped, where I could do 9 things in a day, and they were all within a 20-block radius and that kind of thing. I loved it. I had never lived in a city. We had just visited and those kinds of things from the suburbs. And they were exciting. Everything was possible. My journals are crazy from those days. Just how alive I felt and all of the possibilities in that young mind that could happen.
What borough were you in?
I lived in Manhattan the whole time. Yeah.
Sure.
Back in the day, you could afford to. In 1989, I moved in, and eventually had a rent-stabilized apartment on the Upper West Side. But you could afford to live in Manhattan then, where most artists are way far away.
And after about a year of moving to New York City, you went to graduate school. You went to NYU, Tisch School for the Arts. You got to do a master's degree there.
I did. I got my MFA in performance and choreography. It was a great experience. I was at the end of a generation of modern dance legends and pioneers. They were old at that point in the 80s, and it was anyone from Alwyn Nicolai, Martha Graham, Eric Hawkins, Merce Cunningham, Murray Lewis. I mean, they were all still, Bertram Ross, they were all still alive and willing to influence, spend time. If you got to take their class, it was a miracle. And due to knowing Eric, who I later danced for, and my professors in NYU, like Phyllis Lamhut was one of the original dancers for Nicolai Lewis Dance Company, and so you got a great sense of the history behind it. But also we had an amazing group of artists and guest artists who came in, like Bill T. Jones, who was fairly young at the time, and Ralph Lemon and David Parsons, and they would come in and set works on the company at Tisch as well. So I sort of got the downtown edge and that classical modern put together.
Was there an audition process to get into the school?
Oh, yeah.
What piece or pieces did you do, and what was that?
Well, what you do at a dance audition, usually both academic and professional, is that you take a ballet class, you take a modern class, and there are cuts after each. And then if you're asked to do a solo, you do a solo, and I was choreographing a piece to some Meredith Monk music. That wasn't even finished, but you're only allowed to dance for 2 minutes anyway, so that worked out great. And then you get the interview process.
Eric Hawkins was there at the time, or shortly after?
Eric called me, actually. He had been to a concert at Tisch. Several. All of those would go to concerts if they could, at Juilliard, at Tisch, because those were like the rival schools, and see what was happening, what was new in the dance world. And I got my roommate came in and said, she met me at a bar, and she said, Todd, there's a message for you at home, back when we had machines. And she said, it's from someone named Eric Hawkins? And I said, oh, yeah, right. I said, that's a friend from graduate school dance history class. I'll call back and say I'm Martha Graham. And literally was Eric Hawkins, who had seen me dance at Tisch, called a faculty member to get my number, and asked me to audition for his company. They had lost a man to injury, and they were looking to add a man in for the 10th anniversary of the Joyce celebration that they were preparing for.
And Eric Hawkins, for listeners, was married to Martha Graham?
He was, for 9 years. They had met. Eric started dancing with George Balanchine, at the School of American Ballet, which was called Ballet Society back then. And Lincoln Kirstein, who brought Balanchine over from Europe, was Eric's roommate at Harvard. They were all dumb, can you tell? It's really a shame they didn't accomplish anything. And so he danced for Balanchine for years and started choreographing for a group called Ballet Caravan. And he met Martha at Bennington, which are those famous pictures you see. And they fell in love artistically, and I guess in love otherwise, although Eric was gay, so I don't know how that quite worked out, but with an ego like Martha's, it probably didn't matter.
Martha Graham, Kennedy Center honoree, Presidential Medal of Freedom winner. I saw one of her, and forgive me because I don't know the name, but the one where she is in the...
Lamentation.
Yes.
Yes, in the fabric.
What year was that first performed?
I don't actually remember that. I'm saying it was going to be early 40s, late 40s. It could have been earlier. I'm not exactly sure, but the original fabric was wool knit. It was not, there was not stretchy fabric back in 1938. I mean, leotards were made out of wool.
Yeah. I can't imagine what audiences must have felt when they saw that for the first
she
time.
was very psychologically based in her artistic vision. She believed in strong physical prowess, strong form, but hers was all psychologically based. And they were not always happy places that Martha went. They were often unhappy places, Cave of the Heart and all of those things that, and that was one of the things that Eric was very opposite of after he had left Martha Graham, is that no audience should leave after one of my dances without feeling more enlightened, to feel better, to feel even if it had a story or something to it that always took you somewhere else. But Martha, you know, was into that psychology of the human animal, and I think I mean that human animal. She went dark places and wild places.
What did Eric Hawkins say to you about what he saw in you? And you said of him that he was very generous with his knowledge and time, and certainly a mentor. But did he tell you why he made that phone call?
Well, he loved the quality of movement in this particular piece that he saw me in, and liked my ability to work low to the ground in my floor work, which is something they didn't really do back in the time. But I think the most important thing that Eric did for me was he would say, Todd, step out of the way of yourself. Your body already knows how to do that. And I was trying too hard. I was using too much musculature. I was not letting it happen. I was trying to make it happen. And in dance, it's a combination of both. Engaging the right muscles with the skeleton in the right alignment to create form with ease rather than with force. And so,
at the Todd Rosenlieb School here, you teach, among other forms, Hawkins technique, Graham technique.
We have Graham technique.
And a little Horton technique.
We have Horton technique for sure.
What are the major differences between the three?
Graham technique is a bound flow technique where the muscles are used in a strong and dynamic way which bind the joints together for form and activity. Hawkins technique is a free flow technique where there should be no tension at any point and everything should be alive and changing and movable. Both use very similar forms, however, but Eric came out of Martha. So when he worked with Andre Bernard to create this technique that would allow the body to move more naturally and to gain a greater range of motion by using natural movement, not forcing it. So that was sort of the idea behind it. Horton sort of comes from a very different place. It's a much more angular place. Hawkins would be more attuned to Lamone, where I think Horton is more attuned to Graham in terms of the use of the musculature. And some of the dynamic use of the muscles and shapes.
So when you go to create something and you talk about how you start with nothing and you have to find the music, you have to develop the costumes, you have to do the lighting, do you always have the same formula for creating, or do you start with music for sometimes, or is there a movement that you haven't used in a while or maybe just discovered? What's the formula? Is it the same every time?
It's definitely the latter. You could be inspired by anything. A piece I made called Suggestion was inspired by sitting on the subway going home late at night, and in the 80s the lights would go off on the subway sometimes and then they'd pop back on depending on where you were on the rails. And the people would change posture a little bit, or you'd see the formation change, or their expression had changed. And I realized that was, a unique thing to see it. And I did a piece where the lights go on and off quite a bit at the beginning, and you see it suggests things that could have happened or are about to happen, but never shows the action. So that can inspire me. Sometimes the inspiration is a piece of music I hear and I'm like, I have to do something with that. That is amazing. Or I see a prop that I think is cool, or something in that'll inspire the dance. And sometimes it's someone saying, listen, we have Stravinsky's Les Noces. We'd like to do a whole evening for the arts festival. What do you say?
Sure.
Yeah. And then, okay, it's Les Noces.
Right. Is there a movement or an experience that you've had that you would like to create in terms of a dance but haven't? Do you have a notebook somewhere of just ideas that you sort of ruminate on?
Oh yeah, I have a list of dance titles. Sometimes I'll be in a conversation, I'll be like, oh, that would be a good dance title.
Is your iPhone note?
Yeah, oh yeah. And ideas for dances, definitely they can become, it's a picture or it's a image of a costume that might actually be a high fashion something that looks like it would move and work really well, change the shape, morph the human body a little bit. And I do have a lot of pieces of music written down that also I like. Sometimes I write them down because I want to find a good piece of music when I have an idea, different. And sometimes I'm like, I'm going to start from music. And then you just go to your list and you pull it
Contemporary music, classical music?
Everything.
Everything.
I love everything.
Yeah.
Folk music, there's period music. You can use it all depending on what you're making.
You talked about how when you teach at the governor's school that one of the things that you've enjoyed is introducing the students to different kinds of music, not new music like Nina Simone,
right,
Frank Sinatra.
People they might not have been exposed to.
What's that experience been like for you? And
well, I think it's a two-way street, because certainly at this age I am not the king of the pop culture list and do not know the top 10 songs, but I always know them because the kids have you heard that? Did you hear that? You know, so I'll just buy them on iTunes and listen to them.
Yeah. And
often I really like them and they're really good. The experience, I think, for them is that they will find an enjoyment in a form of music that they didn't know they would like. Whether it's jazz instrumentalists or whether it's Doris Day or whether it's Al Jolson or, you know, I mean, anything, an opera singer from the 40s, you know, just anything that has, and I think because it becomes endowed with movement, that it means something more to them. I know I always felt, wow, that piece of music was so gorgeous. Well, was it really that gorgeous, or was it gorgeous because I got to move to it?
Sure.
And there is a link between those two things that are essential.
There's a thing about some of the production values on those Frank Sinatra records with the orchestra and how it swells and some of those things that I just miss. There isn't really that so much anymore.
No.
It's a different sound.
And Frank kept it alive 2 decades longer than it probably would have been alive if he had not been Frank Sinatra.
Do you feel like Ronan Farrow is his son and not Woody Allen's?
Could be true. I don't know. I'm not betting on it, but it seems likely.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
Yes.
As you well feel.
Yes, absolutely. Did my face say that? Yoga and Pilates. When did you first start doing yoga?
I started doing yoga in New York. At the same time, I started doing Alexander, studying the concepts of Alexander technique, as well as Pilates.
And here on Grammy Street at the Todd Rosenlieb studio, you do have a Pilates studio.
Yes, it's called Pilates at TRDance, and it's a fully stocked Pilates studio. We have 12 instructors. And we teach classical Pilates, which means I learned from 2 women who were Joseph Pilates' right-hand women.
Oh, wow.
So I'm like 3rd generation.
Do you meditate?
I do not meditate, but I definitely have my ways of centering myself. Yeah, I go from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. with barely a break most days. And that includes all different hats being worn during the day, whether it's artistic director or Pilates instructor or department chair or friend to the student, or, you know, those kinds of things. But there are moments in the day where I can find some peace and solitude, whether it's working out or just taking some time to listen to some music in my headphones, preparing rehearsal, and just letting the movement move through me and my brain.
What do you do when you get home at 7:15, since you were 7:10?
Yeah, whatever. Since I live so close, 7:01 possibly. I turn off. I turn off the work. Now, if someone texts me or they need an answer, I do. But when I'm at home, I want to be with my dogs and I want to be with my husband and I want to be, you know, I live this enough during the day. So I like to take care of myself at home. So maybe that's my meditation, that I have the ability to turn it off. And some nights you don't get to.
And some nights, when you can't turn it off, it's probably nice that your husband is in the same line of work, because there's an understanding.
Yeah, well, we used to try to keep all that talk at work, but we like what we do, so why not talk about it at night? So yeah, it's great. And finding out how, he's directing Two Gentlemen of Verona right now for the Governor's School, and that show's going to take on 3 different identities. One is Governor's School show, one is this production for Old Dominion University where different actors will step in as well as the kids from Governor's School, and then he'll do Shakespeare in the Plot, which hasn't happened for a year. I think there was a year off from 12th night. And so, I love to hear what's going on. How does this work? How's the progression? Or, he's setting the 4 seasons for Virginia Ballet Theater right now. And so I don't get to see him during the day because we're like ships in the night.
Right. How did you two meet?
We met at a really good, snooty arts camp in western part of Virginia. It was called the Virginia School of the Arts, and it was in Lynchburg, Virginia. It's since closed. But I taught there 13 years in the summer and guested almost every one of those years during the school year. And he taught there too. We had known each other 7 years before.
That's Jerry Falwell territory.
It is right near Liberty, my friend, where you should get that gun registration. Thank you, Jerry Falwell Jr.
There's an amazing YouTube video of you speaking a couple years ago for a 4Kids benefit.
Oh, the Story Slam.
You do an adaptive dance class for students with Down syndrome.
I do.
And you gave an amazing speech about a woman who came, I guess it was the grandmother.
The grandmother, who I refer to as the Chihuahua in that Story Slam, because you have to make it a good story, came to me because her son had come to them with Down syndrome.
And that's the phrase that she used.
Yes. Our Gus came to us with Down syndrome, and I thought that was a beautiful turn of phrase. I just think it's amazing, because everyone comes with something.
Right.
And she said, I'm looking for opportunities for my grandson, and I saw this article in People magazine about a program up in Boston for kids with Down syndrome, and then I saw something on Oprah Winfrey, and here's the information, and what do you say? I was like, okay, let's try it. I know nothing.
Right.
I literally knew nothing. But now we're at our 6th year. 2 classes go on at the same time, and we're adding a 3rd class for Parent and Me for kids younger than the ones that are currently in class.
And that's about all I have, other than you have dogs. What kind of dogs?
I do.
What kind of dogs?
I have a long-haired dachshund, red, named Bernie, who is from the SPCA. We had donated our building for the Metropolitan Art Auction. It was their first one they had done. And we had a Chihuahua with a brain tumor, and we had just put her down, and about a week later I hear these little clicks. And that was the dachshund running into the middle of my dance class. Needless to say, I didn't teach another step that day. And then I have a pug, a long-haired pug that we found by the airport, actually, on the highway.
Wow, the Norfolk airport.
Yeah.
So I had a girlfriend who had a dachshund, and they're burrowers.
Yes, they were bred to kill badgers.
And so we would be in bed, and the dog would be burrow under the sheets.
Absolutely true.
And it's amazing the temperature that the body is able to reach in such a small animal.
Yes.
You've experienced this.
Yes, it'll dig underneath, and then it backs into whatever armpits, anything that it can be in a tight space.
It's very cozy.
It wants a tight space. Yeah.
Your dog sleeps in the bed, right?
It does.
Of course it does.
But Bernie always falls asleep in the bed and then gets under the bed, where we also have this blanket that's just wadded up, which is another thing it burrows in.
Okay.
So he loves that.
And the pug, the grunts,
Oh yeah, just like
is nice.
the whole time. Yeah.
But the do you have to do like the polyp butt stuff with the dogs? Isn't that one of the dogs that you have to?
That is one of the traits of. We have done some. Well, first of all, the pug is a money pit. It's had 2 cancer surgeries. It's had everything you could possibly have wrong with that dog, including diabetes, 2 shots a day, prescription food and treats. I mean, it's had it all. And a survivor. Is blind, and is also now deaf, we think, and has hip dysplasia and neck arthritis. 11, they think, because when we found it, they thought maybe 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
So no one knows.
So we've had it for 5 years, but we've spent at least $2,000 a year or more per year keeping that dog alive. So.
Wet food or dry food?
Both dogs are dry food. We're kibblers. Yeah.
I like the kibble.
Yeah.
You've got great hair.
Thank you. It's old and gray.
Well, so is mine's getting gray as well. It really means a lot. Thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
This is Andrew Paul Cronin, and you've been listening to the Q&A with A.P.C. To hear archived episodes, go to soundcloud.com/QAAPC or subscribe to the show on iTunes. For exclusive content, including upcoming shows, behind-the-scenes pictures, and more, follow the show on Instagram at instagram.com/QAAPC. The executive producer of the Q&A with A.P.C. is Ben Riley.